Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jaden, and today I'm going to be telling you about the books I read in July. The first one I read was Everybody Wants to Rule the World But Me, and I rated this one at 4.5 stars. So this is a sequel to How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying, which I read last year and really enjoyed, and so I was really excited for this sequel book, and it did not disappoint. I really enjoyed this book, and I loved coming back to the characters, especially Davy, who's our protagonist. While I was reading, I did forget that this book had long chapters, but I liked how the chapters were broken up so it was easier to digest. The main villain of our story, not Davy. Davy is trying to be the villain, but she's actually the protagonist, the main antagonist of the story. Didn't make sense to me for his motivation, especially when it comes to humans. And the story ended rather abruptly and immediately after he was defeated, and it was way too fast how he was defeated and how the story wrapped up. Like, I went to the next page and I'm like, oh, the story's over. So I didn't like how immediately the story ended. I wish there was more in the series because I really enjoyed these books and I was so looking forward to them. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. The second book I read was The Neighbor Favor, and I rated this one 4.5 stars as well. So after being email ghosted by her favorite author, months later, Lily meets her new neighbor who, unknown to her, was the author that ghosted her. Can these two get back together and have sparks reunite? So I really enjoyed myself with this book. I read the other one in the series, The Love Lyric, last month, but I can't decide which of these two that I liked better. I think I rated them the same, but they're an equal footing for me. I liked the email correspondence in the beginning and how they both were hurt when the emails correspondence stopped. I liked both Nick and Lily's character arcs throughout the book and how they both grew a backbone to those around them who were trying to manipulate them or use it for their own gain. I had a fun time in reading this. I want to read the second book in their series, which is The Partner Plot, which is about Violet, but my library sadly doesn't have it. It has the first and the third, but it doesn't have the second, which is really weird. But I really want to read the second book in that series. The third book I read was Death in the Downline, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. So after getting laid off her job and going back to her hometown, Drew meets Becca with her old best friend who draws her into her MLM. But when they go to a convention and there's a death, can Drew find out what really happened? So it's an interesting premise, and it was a fast read. I liked the idea for it, but the whodunit just didn't work for me personally. I started to glaze over and not care after a while in this book, and I'm like, I don't care. I'll finish it. I'm not going to DNF it, but I do not care where this is going. Which is funny because I was interested and fascinated with a good portion of the book in the beginning, and then after kind of like the death part, which is funny because I also read a lot of murder mystery and I was not into this murder mystery. I did like how at the end of each chapter of this book, that we would see tags or posts or emails or notes about this MLM and how they want people to post, or there's text from certain characters from each chapter while they're in this MLM. So I found that really fun to read that after each chapter, so I really liked that. I thought it was a really cool way to end each chapter. The fourth one I read was Plus Size Player, and I rated this one 4.75 stars. So Nina is a model who has a few situationships, but when one starts to become a little bit more, will this actually become a relationship? So I enjoyed this book much more than I thought I would. Plot starts immediately, which I wasn't expecting. Thought it would be more of a slow burn, but I wasn't disappointed by it. There was a major plot point halfway through the book that felt more like a third act reveal, but I'm glad it wasn't. There were good sex scenes though. A few times I thought they were going to get caught because they were kind of doing it in public. Also, I found it kind of annoying that Nina mentions how good Russ is at sex, and like she talks about how good he is at sex in like the first 17 pages. This is also the second book in a series. I will get to the first one later, but I enjoyed this one better than the first one, which I will get to later. The fifth book I read was No Place Left to Hide, and I rated this one 4 stars. So after the incident months prior, Brooke just wants to relax at a party, but when returning home, a car follows her. Won't stop until she tells the truth about what really happened that night. So I finished this in less than a day. Fast read. I read That's Not My Name by that author last year, and I saw this book in the YA section of my library, and I'm like, I need to read it because I really loved That's Not My Name. Book was kind of predictable with the whodunit, which was disappointing compared to That's Not My Name. I liked how we saw that both Claire and Brooke weren't good people, but how the latter was worse because of her family name and the expectations it came with it, why she did. I liked the text chain at the end, and it gave a good resolution, and I wasn't expecting how the incident actually happened compared to what characters were told happened. After that, I read Famous Last Words, and I rated that one 3 stars. So Cam's husband Luke is in a hostage situation, but he's the captor, and Cam has to figure out why her husband is doing this in the first place. So it's an okay book and read. Plot starts a few pages in, and then the main synopsis of the book ends less than halfway through the book, and then it's just like the aftermath of it, which I wasn't expecting. Like, I also realized reading this that the whole plot of this book could have happened if a certain character wasn't stupid or wasn't somewhere where they would be spotted at. I did like the dual perspective of this book and the short chapters. Just, there were stupid character decisions that could have saved them a whole lot of trouble if they just didn't do what they did. After that, I read Leather and Lark, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. So after meeting each other a year prior, Lachlan and Lark get married to protect the ones that they care about, but will something come out of this arranged marriage? So this is the second book in the Ruinous Love trilogy. I read the third one last month, and then I read the first one this month, which I will get to later. And out of all 3 of the books, this one is my favorite. I did have some issues with it, like the explanation of why Lark gets married is kind of clunky for me, and I wish we got more chapters from our villain's perspective, because we got a little bit of that in the beginning, and then it's just kind of sparse throughout. I enjoyed the sex scenes though. It took a little longer, which makes sense because this is the enemies to lovers story. I did like the last chapters though, which were sex scenes. I liked that. I thought Lark was better serial killer, or in her words, multiple deleter, than Rose, who was the main protagonist in Skip and Sparrow. And I liked Lark's reasoning a lot, and it made sense. I finished this book in around a day. Fast read. I did like the nicknames that Leather and Lark gave to each other. So Duchess and Batman and Keanu. I thought those were really cute. After that, I read Vacation Wars, and I also rated this one 3.75 stars. So Tessa is out in Greece for her sister's wedding and sees Miles, the guy she's seen summers before in Greece when she was younger, but they haven't seen each other in the past 7 years. Can they reconnect during Tessa's sister's wedding and the shenanigans that come with it? So based off the synopsis, I thought this was the enemies to lovers, but it's very much a friends to lovers, which I'm not mine, just wasn't what I was expecting. Tessa in the beginning, especially when she starts blabbering, was really annoying, and I had to yell at her to shut up a couple times. Also, Roxanne, her sister, is an awful person, especially what she does to Tessa in the book during their vacation wars. It was just no and super toxic in my opinion. I do have some sympathy for Roxanne, but not a lot. There's also the prologue in the beginning of the book, which I didn't find very necessary. It gave you some context, but not a lot. Like, they mention it later in the book, and you don't need a prologue to get it. There was a stupid third act breakup with parts I could relate to or felt. It pissed me off in those last 30 pages that I knew they were going to get back together. Book got better when Miles and Tessa got closer together, and it wasn't a bore like it was earlier. There were good sex scenes though, so it took a while to get on, and I finished it in around a day. After that, I read Overruled, and I rated this one 4 stars. So Ezra and Danny are opposing lawyers who sleep with each other, but can they turn this into something more? So I finished it a little more than a day. It was very, very cute. I really liked the enemies to lovers in this book, and the vibes it gave, and I could relate to Danny's problems with her parents. The conservatorship with Jackie was interesting. I wish there was more of Ezra's POV in this book because it's mostly Danny's. I wish Alexander got more of what he deserved. And I'm kind of indecisive about the sex scenes in this book, but they were good, but felt like there was a lot, and some of them weren't needed, which is something you don't hear me say a lot. But there were a lot, and I'm like, this doesn't need to be here. After that, I read Curvy Girl Summer, and I rated that one 4.25 stars. So Aaliyah is trying to find a date for her 30th birthday party at her local bar by having her online dates meet her there, while the bartender, Ahmed, keeps an eye on her during these dates and makes sure she's safe. So this is the first book in the series. When I mentioned Plus Size Player, this is the first book, and then Plus Size Player's second book. You don't have to read them in order to know what's going on. I did like this book, but I liked Plus Size Player better. I finished it in a little more than a day. I enjoyed the chemistry between Ahmed and Aaliyah, and I liked how they both looked out for each other in different ways. Uncle Al, who's Aaliyah's uncle, is an asshole, and I didn't like the miscommunication lying about Ahmed's wedding ring. He wears it and then he doesn't wear it, but then we get a reasoning of why he still wears it. And it made sense. I just didn't like how he was lying about it to Aaliyah, and he lied to her about it in a very specific way. I wish there were more sex scenes, but I did like the slow burn of this relationship. After that, I read Call Forth the Fox, and I rated that one 4 stars. So while Rose is in the western wood, she sees a bear attack a fox, and then that bear attacks her. Her sister then aims an arrow at the bear, who then turns into a boy who's under a curse to kill the fox. This was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. It's also a sapphic retelling of the story of Snow White and Rose Red, which I wasn't familiar with, but I did enjoy the story. I liked the relationship between Ro and Colette, though I thought the latter was being stupid at the end when especially came to her father, and being warned against him several times by Ro, but Colette didn't listen. I also didn't like how the villain was defeated temporarily and then majorly, and that was very anticlimactic for me, and I wish it had been done bigger and better, especially with how much of a threat he seemed to be, and then the way he was defeated a couple times. I just didn't work for me. After that, I read You Shouldn't Have Come Here, and I rated that one 5 stars. So Grace is Calvin's Airbnb host at the farm, and they start developing feelings for each other. But when Grace starts noticing weird things about Calvin, she may need to find a way out. So I had low expectations for this book, but I really, really enjoyed it. Finished it in less than a day. I liked the dual POV. Both Grace and Calvin made you trust them and not trust them at the same time, and also feel sympathy for them. I had read books from this author before, and I really enjoyed them, so that's why I picked up this book, and I was not disappointed. I didn't expect the twist at the end. It mostly shocked me, and it made the whole book just much more enjoyable with the twist and what it actually meant. After that, I read Say You'll Remember Me, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. So after having the perfect date with Xavier the night before, Samantha moves to California to help her ailing mom. Can the relationship last more than this perfect date? So this book was very cute, even though there were a few times or things that made me cringe or take me out while I was reading. Like there were like modern references to things or lingo that they use, and I'm like, ew, girls, don't say that. I liked how their relationship grew after their date, and how they decided to go for it, even though one of them lived in Minnesota, one of them lived in California. I had a lot of fun reading it, and it was a very fast read, and the plot like starts immediately. Every time I say the title of this book, though, I think of the lyrics, Say You'll Remember Me from Wildest Dreams from Taylor Swift. So that's immediately what I think of every time I think of this book because of the title of the book. After that, I read The Sirens, and I read this one 4 stars. So after an incident at school, Lucy goes to visit her sister, who's not home but finds her diary, which she starts reading. While we also get POV chapters from Mary, who's with her sister Eliza, as they get shipped to Australia on a prison ship in the 1800s. So I enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I would. Finished it in less than a day. I read a lot of books in less than a day this month. I liked all 3 POV chapters with the main characters and how they dealt with their disease, because we got Lucy's chapter, we got Jess's diaries in the chapter, and we got Mary's chapters. I wasn't expecting the twist, but it made sense in retrospect with all the clues we get. Overall, I really enjoyed this book, and it kept me hooked like every chapter. Like after every chapter, I couldn't like put it down because it was that good. The 15th book I read was Green Arrow, Black Canary, Volume 4, Enemies List, and I read this one 4 stars. So Black Canary and the Green Arrow deal with Cupid as she starts to kill Oliver's old enemies, while someone from Diana's past comes back. Supposedly this is the 4th one in the series, but there is good enough exposition that you don't feel confused about what is going on. I enjoyed the story of Cupid and why she does what she does, but I'm not a fan of her costume in the book and what she had to do when her plan to kill Ollie fails. She ends up throwing up a key, and it just grosses me out. Overall, I like the comic, and I want to read more in the series because I just enjoyed this one, so I want to get the books before this one and the ones after this one. And then the 16th book and the last book I read in July was Butcher and Blackbird, and I rated this one 3.25 stars. So Roman and Salome are serial killers who compete against each other in a yearly competition to kill their serial killer target. So this is the first book in the Ruinous Love trilogy, and this is my least favorite. At times, I have this problem with all the Ruinous Love trilogies, but especially this one. There was just scenes that felt jump cutty and jumpy. Like we would learn where we are on one page, and the next page we're outside when we were inside in a room, and it was just very jump cutty, and I hated it. And I didn't know where we were, or what was going on. I felt like the serial killing could have been better, and I didn't feel okay. So, and I didn't feel like it took up most of the book. So, to me, I can describe what happens in this book in 3 acts. Ready? First one, the actual plot. That's what happens in the first third of the book. The second book is after the serial killing, and it's just sex. Just sex between the 2 characters, which, like, makes sense. They're growing their relationship. They want to, like, express themselves that way. That's fine. But it just felt like it was so much fucking sex. Sex. That's what it was. And then the last third was, alright, this is a serial killing book. Let us wrap this up. And it was, like, with some serial killing there. And it was just, like, I didn't like that. I'm like, no. no. I just it did not work for me. I did like Romance Alone though, and their defeat of the last killer. I liked a lot. I am glad that I read this trilogy backwards because I don't think I would have read Leather and Lark or Skip and Sparrow if I had read Butcher and Blackbird first, because that one is my least favorite and Leather and Lark is my favorite. So yeah, I'm glad I read them backwards because I don't think I would have read the other books. And yeah, so those are all the books I read in July. If you have any ideas, recommendations for next month, let me know down below. Otherwise, I'll see you then. Bye.